So welcome everybody to our second staff chat. You'll notice that on your screen, you just got a notification that we will be recording this meeting. The purpose of recording this meeting is so we can share it out to people who can't join us at this time, but also as a repository, what we discovered in our conversations that we're having every day with organizations and with school boards and school authorities in many different regions is that Wi-Fi and broadband is, as we all would know anyways, is unreliable in some areas. And so by recording this and sharing it, it allows people access the content in different times during the day. So it's not putting a load on the broadband where it's required for even things just like the healthcare communications or, the core functions of or essential services as we hear those terms being used. So this is just another way to create content and be able to share it out. And I had the pleasure of being on a call with a group from Kenya just before this call, and they were explaining that their primary mode of communication is through phone service and WhatsApp. And so they have Wi-Fi available through their phone. And so we're considering how to create content that they can consume through their phone. So this is a way we can, again, like I said, record content and then maybe chunk it out to share in a low bandwidth situation. So those are the reasons we're recording. But thank you for being here with us today. As I said, this is day 2 of our staff room chats. We started this 2 weeks ago. We put it in our calendar, not realizing how critical it was to come together regularly to support one another in the work that we're doing and the plans that we're putting in place for when we have an opportunity to welcome our students back into a learning community. What the shape of that learning community will look very different. So yesterday our organization Fair Chance Learning introduced our colleagues who are working alongside us in the staff room chat and on some of the projects that we have going on to support the communities and the school systems that we're supporting, and to share our remote learning strategies and remote working strategies. We're an organization that is 10 years this year, and man, we're doing some big growing up this year and at this time in terms of supporting this education with what we're all dealing with. But we're doing it together. I saw Michael Fullen tweet out this morning that complacency is the devil's work being done for pro bono. So, we can't be complacent. We can't sit back. We need to be working with one another and supporting one another, connecting one another with one another in the work that we're doing. So being mindful of the work that we're doing for sure and the support that each of us requires, but the need to do something and work to find solutions and to try things out in this new reality. So that was the content of yesterday, and then we wanted to kick off today with the skills or the thinking or the experience that's key considerations for building an online community, because at some point we will be welcoming our students in an online environment. So how can we do that? How can we be thinking about the best way to do that? And so obviously we called the best Corinne Hoisington, who we've known for I think it was 2014. And what's funny is that Dustin had come home from a conference where he was in Sarnia at Lambton College, and the conference was called the Mobile Learning Summit. And he said, Martha, you have to meet this woman. You have to meet her. Her name is Corinne Hoisington. She is amazing. She's a boss mom. She's got tons of kids. She's got tons of energy, and she's just so wickedly smart on how to create at that time, you know, how to utilize mobile tools. And so here we are in 2025 years later, 6 years later, where we're asking Corinne to share her expertise, knowing that she's only gone deeper with the mobile experience and the ways in which she's meeting her students' needs, but also the way that she supports school leaders across the world. She's so ambitious in terms of her travel, which is amazing, and over the course of the 6 years has given us lots of advice from a parenting side of things, from a relationship side of things, from how to keep it light and fun, but also from a working perspective. So it's amazing that we have Corinne here with us this morning and sharing her best practices. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Corinne, to get us going here.
Well, good morning, everyone. Let me go ahead and queue up here. So, hey, let me know real quick, Martha, are you seeing maybe a slide deck or something?
I sure am.
All right, let's roll. Hey, first of all, I want to get everybody in the groove. So let's make sure we're able to kind of wake up this morning and get moving. So everybody, could I see a bit of sway? Chat room. I want to see that everyone gets rolling here.
We're not hearing your music, but we're loving your dance moves, Corinne. We wouldn't expect anything else.
Well, there was some amazing music. We're going to have to work on the sound here, but let's get rolling. Hey, everybody, I'm Corinne Hoisington. I'm one of you. I'm an educator. I teach at Central Virginia Community College in Lynchburg, Virginia, down in the States, and also at a high school with dual enrollment. I get the awesome opportunity to present in about 90 countries so far, but I'm not even halfway, so I've got to really work much harder. So let's discuss how we can build our learning community right now to really cultivate that personal connection. And I really think that's what it's all about. Hey, I write a lot of books out there for companies like Cengage Learning and National Geographic, but what I'm most proud of is Martha was right. I am a mom of 6 children. And by the way, there's some, if you're counting more, they have spoused up a little bit here. And fortunate to them start to repopulate this beautiful planet with 6 grandchildren now. So this is my herd. There's me in the center with my co-partner in this world, my husband, who is a very patient man. And, you know, a lot of us are clearly right now working from home. I saw in the last 24 hours, the schools closing down worldwide. We've seen the notifications in Quebec, Ontario. It's just really a weird moment. So I actually have working not very far from me right now. This is my granddaughter. She is also working from home right now, and she is ruling the world. So I think she's doing a much better job than I am with connecting with everyone. So I think we could all learn from this moment. I want to share a story as we get started. I want everyone to look in this yellow circle right here. This is a teacher at Dubai International Academy in the Emirates world across the seas. And she's a good friend of mine. She had school on Sunday. Sunday is a regular school day in Dubai, but like many schools around the world, she is no longer meeting face-to-face with her students. And on Sunday, she asked me to help her set up a chat with online, a remote presence with her kindergarten class. And so a week before, we send out an email to all the parents so they could help their kids get online. And how we started this remote community is I was in that group along with Miss Taz and all of her kindergarten. I had to yell out their faces for privacy. But I want you to imagine we actually had 30 kids in here. We first started with their parents, and she gave an inspirational talk about, you know, how she could assist them with their classwork at home and how she is this permanent fixture, whether it be online, through email, through WhatsApp, whatever, just to help them. And then the kids all switched positions with their parents. And this is this moment I captured. And Cindy started out the hour with them with reading them their favorite story. And during the story, I was kind of amazed. I watched every one of these kids tear up. They started crying. And once they saw one cry, the next one would cry. And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't see this as something that we were going to deal with. And I didn't understand the tears at first. And then Cindy popped in as their teacher and said, are you guys just so happy to see each other after 3 weeks? They've been locked down for much longer than the rest of the world. And they all nodded. They were missing that sense of community. They wanted that connection. And I just thought it was such an epic moment. And I think this is something that we all need. It is part of our DNA today. So how can we create this community? And to me, a community is a place where each voice can be heard. I want the undertone here to be about developing relationships and learning, but lightened up. And let me explain what I mean by that. So what I mean by that is, even if we don't hear the sound of this video, I want you, this is how
we hear
I
the
started.
Sound of this one, just so you know, Corinne.
Pardon?
We can hear the sound on this one.
Oh, good. Okay. So I started my class the other day with this video. Let me stop that. So the reason I started with this video the other day in my class is I wanted them to understand, yeah, we're all kind of, you know, in place in our homes, but that doesn't mean we still can't connect, and how that emotional connection works for all of us and how that we can be there for our students. You know, last night I had a class with my high school students online, and I opened up with this picture. So here's what I want you to do. This is actually a drone image of seals, and it was the winner of the International Wildlife Photo announced yesterday. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at this photo with the lens of what's happening right now across the world. And I want you in the chat feature just to kind of tell me in a sentence or two, how does this kind of bring about your thought processes? What does this make you think of? And not necessarily just about seals, about the moment that we're kind of experiencing right now. Maybe even the sense of community. So let's open that chat window just for a second and see what people are thinking and saying. I've got to leave the photo up here for obvious reasons. So, and Martha, would you help me out? Could you read to us maybe a couple of the comments? That would be awesome.
Sure. I'll give them some time to think about it, but Barb's first sense is that's amazing.
Good.
And for those of you who are new to the Teams environment, you'll see on your status bar that there's a little speech bubble that you can click on that as you run your cursor over, you get your tooltips. And so the speech bubble is the conversation tab, and that's where you can click on it and then contribute in the conversation tab. And Nancy says that we can be together as a family and community, even though we are physically isolated from the rest of the world.
I love that. I love that.
Mr. Fire Alarm, Kyle, who always likes to pull the fire alarm when we're around, says that a community of SEALs who are our people who are on an island that looks like an arrow. Together we are going to head in the right direction.
I love that. I hadn't seen that. Isn't that interesting how each voice in a community perceives things differently?
It's telling that it's coming from Kyle, who opened the door that said, do not go out this way, fire exit, and he just pushed through the door at the Microsoft office, and the alarms went everywhere, and I will not let him forget that.
He knows what direction to go in.
Yeah, who knew? Joe Archer is saying this is a SEALs version on Netflix and chilling.
I love it. I love it. I'll get one more.
Yeah, Krista said our world is both small and huge right now, finding ways to stick together. Awesome.
And why I start with this is I want you to understand remote learning isn't only about your voice being pushed out. It's about a community of each voice being heard. We all see this different perspective, and I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I've got to teach content, Corinne. I understand that. But I think what's most important here is to join together and realize it's not just about the moment we might all be able to be in the same place. It's about them understanding that you are there for them, that even offline, and that whatever their thought or their question is, it's valid and their thought process is important here. So I know we're all faced with this in the news right now. We're seeing that most schools worldwide are completely unprepared for this. You know why? We've never had this happen. You know what was shocking to me is I heard over the news that 1/3 of the world's schools are now closed. I can't even wrap my mind around that. And we're now feeling this digital divide. I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but we have to start out with this simple fact that when we're talking about remote learning, we have to understand that it may not all be where we could be live and together and everyone has this device. I live in a very rural, poor part of Virginia, where 80% of my students were on free lunch. So if that tells you about the financial setting, and as we move online, one of the problems I'm facing is many of my students don't even have a computer at home or don't even have a recent smartphone that they can connect in. So I know we're first facing that issue in community. But let's talk about what kind of communities could we form here and in this moment. To me, the first community that we should be reaching out is, let's not forget the parents. The parents are now on those front lines trying to teach their kids and to help you connect and to facilitate. And it's not only the centric family, there's grandmas and aunties and neighbors and our babysitters and different groups that are trying to help here. So maybe would it be possible in your world to set up a once a week meeting time for those who can make it and record those for those who can't? You know, what are some of the questions that parents have? Maybe give an overview of the week's content that we want them to cover. Maybe teach how we're teaching math to grade 3 anymore. It's changed since most of us were in a school. Now, have you noticed something as we've been talking? Everybody look down. On the bottom of your screen, whatever I've been saying has been showing up in French. Why? Understand that a lot of our students out there, of course in Canada, we know the numbers are 53% of homes speak English, 21% speak French at home, 4% speak Chinese at home, and another 17% are a conglomeration of languages like Punjabi, Arabic, Spanish. Why am I pointing this out? What I'm doing right now, and I'm going to break out of my slides for a moment, I'm going to show you in Microsoft Office 365 in PowerPoint. There's now a tool under slideshow, and we can help you with this later offline to set this up. I'm using something called subtitles or closed captioning, and I can pick any languages. So maybe as I work with parents who are somewhat, going to possibly speak some of these languages at home, maybe this is an easier way to connect. And what is super crazy cool about this is you don't even have to be using PowerPoint. There's a website out there called translate.it. Let me just show it to you. Here I'm at a free page called translate.it. If you guys would type that into our chat window. And what this would do is I can start a conversation in whatever language I prefer, and it can actually be seen in 64 different other languages. This is something Microsoft's putting out there for free. And here's what the cool thing about it is. Even if they don't have a computer to join the conversation and see that closed captioning, you can actually download the free app if you're looking at my phone real quick here. And with this free app called Microsoft Translator, Microsoft Translator does for us is the parents can download this free app. And real quick, I asked all the folks at Fair Chance Learning, here's what I want them to do real quick. I want you to open up your Microsoft Translator app and type in CDEAI. Everybody look at the bottom of my screen right down here. You could actually, on another tab, go to www.translate.it/CDEAI, or on the Microsoft Translator app, type in that same code, pick any of the 64 languages, and what I'm saying right now would be seen in your preferred language. Hey, let's just take a moment. Once my Fair Chance Learning folks get that, let's just look up on the screen. Everyone say something and show your app and tell us what language you have it in. Martha, what language?
Arabic.
Bart?
Hola, Español.
Perfecto. I grew up in Miami. I actually grew up in Spanish as my first language. English is my second, so I understand completely. So do you see what I mean? So maybe this is one little free tool that could help us in this remote community. And I have to tell you, it's super easy to use. So now we can connect any which way. And so it doesn't speak every language.
So we're not getting the sound, but we are getting the closed captioning. We're getting the closed captioning.
The closed captioning. What it was saying is she was trying to get them to speak in those 60 different languages. I don't know if they actually do reindeer just yet. But what we're seeing here is you could build a community of just teachers at your school. You know, we're all home right now, and building that community of best practices, what's working at our school, I think we should be meeting together. Displaying those best practices. Connect with your colleagues, find out how they're connecting with their students. And I also want you to create a community of getting IT help from the brilliant people in each of our provinces that can help us make sure we can connect in the best way with our students and with educational organizations like Fair Chance Learning. And even tutoring students online. This is a way to reach out one-on-one with whatever way works. And let's face it, for most learners, learning is a group thing. It kind of pushes us to become our best. And if you're honored to be able to meet with your students, do some icebreakers when you get started. Let students have that voice of sharing their favorite book, maybe favorite movie, what dessert do they love? Do a superpower share if you could have any superpower. The other day I rolled the dice, and whatever the dice showed at the beginning of our meeting, they had to share with us. So, we want to connect at any grade level. We're sending out virtual field trips that families can take right now. And for example, before they hop online, they can go on these virtual field trips with their students and their families to kind of keep learning as we go. Take this as an opportunity, not as a negative as we move forward. And every student really should have a voice to be heard, whether that's through a discussion board. And don't forget, this is tough on everybody. Their emotional feelings right now, what do they feel like? Students are very now disconnected with their classmates, which is very important to them. Maybe by connecting them as much as we can, it would lift us all up. And anything that they post, let's remember, they need that respectful voice. I think anytime we hear their voices, remind them, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? As the mother of 6 children and now 6 grandchildren, that phrase, is it kind, is my family mantra. I want to hear that they're uplifting each other and not picking on each other and bullying each other. All those things are very real. So as we close and open it up for comments, I think communities inspire us to up our game. When I know that everyone is going to contribute ideas and thought processes, I think we all want to be our best. And I think together we inspire each other. And that's what community is all about. So I want you to remember 5 actions every time you connect. We want to educate. We want to celebrate. We want to enlist everyone's voice and their share, their pair, their work. We want to connect. And guys, this conversation shouldn't always be one way. We need to listen. And listening is hard for us as teachers. We're used to being the providers of information. So let's listen to how they feel. In future upcoming events, we're going to be sharing things like how to use Teams. Teams is now part of D2L for free. So if you're using Canvas or whatever platform, we're now seeing this show up. And this is a great tool to use that doesn't take a lot of bandwidth, and it could be free. We're using it right now, obviously. And why we can teach online lessons for free. We can record lessons that they could watch on their phones or their parents' phones. So you can actually have 250 students live at the same time on video. There's even a whiteboard. So let's really look at these options as we move forward. Let me share my information real quick here so that if you'd like to have any assistant, anything going on, you could reach me. Here's my email address. And please follow me on Twitter. I'm SamTechNow. I always try to share information, and so honored, guys, that you would take your valuable morning and share a little bit of time with me remotely. Hey, let's open it up now to some discussion. What are some things that you're doing in your communities and to enlist and celebrate and education and connect and listen to our students today?
Awesome. Thanks, Corinne. So while you're thinking about those questions, feel free to come off mute and ask a question or provide a comment or an insight to us. I think, Corinne, where, like, even looking at your avatar there, that's okay. Where do you see these immersive technologies playing a role in students learning right now?
I think we've always seen these technologies as kind of like an enrichment, to what we were doing in the classroom, and they were awesome. And it was hard for us in the classroom to always have enough bandwidth to wrap our hands around how to use a lot of them. Well, now game has changed. I mean, completely. And I think every teacher, I've belonged to this Facebook group called Pandemic Pedagogy, and I invite you to kind of get involved as well. It's kind of teachers all over the world going, what? How do we, somehow connect through this weird moment? I now think we have to put these technologies in center court. This is now our primary way of connecting when we can. Of course, we understand worldwide that this is not an option for everyone. But if things like Flipgrid and Teams can be even used just on smartphones, and they can, to me, this is maybe a way we can now center court this and make it available for almost everyone and anyone, and build that community. It may not be our primary way we're teaching, but it may be the primary way we're connecting. So
that's really interesting, and you started with the digital divide too, how that also has to be, I would say, center court. So like, I know school districts are considering the devices that are currently in their buildings locked up as maybe ways that our students can be accessing technology if they don't have it. Do you think that there is a strategy where it should be a phone experience? Like, I know that my kids are uber productive on their devices that are mobile, like their phone devices, and I'm super productive on my iPhone as well. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm looking at what Nancy said, and I agree. She says, many in Alberta right now are in a hold mode, awaiting direction from their boards of how we're allowed to even communicate. I think this might be our prime time to kind of jump in and say, hey, I've got a couple ideas I'm willing to share out without the province, within my school district, and maybe this is our go-to. So think of teachers, some of the things they could be doing is in Teams is simply recording when they don't have a live class. You can still use that recording tool, and then pushing out through our mobile devices so that anyone could see maybe a story time or talking about grade 4 in this math and whiteboard that we record. We could be using things like Flipgrid. If you're not familiar with Flipgrid, it allows the community to come in with video. And by the way, now even does VR and all this crazy cool stuff. So I think we kind of have to see it. If we're not in a situation where a majority has a work at home device, then I think mobile is the way to go. At least it would provide that sense of community. I wish you would have seen those kids in Dubai crying just to see each other. And I think we can't forget that sense of community in just making paperwork and sending it out for the parents to help the students with each week. It's going to be core.
Yeah, I think like you said, we can't forget the parents and committing to connecting with the parents, right? I mean, even seeing what Joanne's saying, that teachers are afraid to do anything right now, like they're awaiting direction.
Yeah.
And so, you have this teaching is my professional practice. I'm employed by this employer. So I have my roles and responsibilities and obligations that I have to follow through from that side of things. And then I have this call to support learning because it is my passion, it is my profession. So, are there strategies? Like, I think the recording and familiarizing yourself, and Krista makes a great point as well, saying that if she can be learning these tools to leverage when it's time and kind of map it out in her head, settle down what it looks like for her learning environment, then that uncertainty is removed from the parents, like just saying, how am I going to keep my son or daughter engaged, happy, healthy, secure during this time?
Yeah. And I think this is this week or two that you guys are, shut down, waiting for direction, that we need our voices to kind of be heard, saying, hey, I've got some ideas that could really work here. And don't make them a requirement. It wouldn't be like for a grade for the kids to hop on Flipgrid and make this community video. But for those who really, this is an important piece, it would be available. And I don't think we should overwhelm them with XYZ, all these technologies, because for a lot of our families, the parents aren't very tech savvy. Mm-hmm. But to have one or two that we connect with, I think will be valuable.
Cool. And wow, that's a huge stat. Look at Joanne Milligan. 80% of my students logged into DTLL yesterday. They want to continue to learn. And when we were, asking our children how they were spending their day, like the first thing that my daughter said was, I got my math question right, and now I have science too, Mom. So, there is learning that's, I think you're exactly right. There is learning that's taking place, and students want it. They want to connect. I think that, a lot of the comments, Zelia mentions the social emotional learning during this time, and for parents too, like to say, listen, like you don't have to get them through your curriculum expectations as it relates to data management and math. Like this is not for you to cover right now. But over the course of these staff room chats, we're trying to identify these critical conversations that need to take place. And so, building online learning community today, followed up with well-being. Tomorrow, Jeff Hainbuck will be taking us through well-being and what does that look like, well-being delivered through remote experiences, and why we actually need to be paying critical attention to that. And then from there, moving on to remote learning from an Indigenous perspective, with Kim Kirk taking us through the realities that have been, our northern rural communities forever in terms of how they've accessed education, how they've supported parent communities that might not have access to technology or the resources that we would find in more urban schools. And then following up with the adult learning conversation as well, right? Like what can we be doing as our time as parents, as all of the things that are occupying our minds right now, but also as adult learners, how can we be taking the opportunity to deepen our skills for this as well?
Look at what Kyle said. Kyle, brilliant. He says, I'm looking at it in phases. Number one, let's connect with our class, learn what works easily across devices. 2, do some informal learning. Then look at remote learning assignments. He said, as an aside, my son has been doing work US, but was so excited to see his teacher classmates all day. So, I think we do have to look at this in phases. And I think we can't just say tomorrow we turn all this on. But I think it's a wake-up call. If there's anything that comes positive out of all of this, is we know in North America and around the world, education and equity is not all the same. What our rural areas and what our city schools are completely, totally different. And I think we need at a government level and the Ministry of Education to really start seeing leveling this playing field, because it is urgent. Yeah, we have this moment in time, but I think in the big picture, there'll be many moments in time that we need to connect with our students.
Yeah. And Jeff just posted there, like for us, we have like the urgency we feel is there for sure. And yet we need that patience to realize that it's okay for the uncertainty. I do think that the phased thinking as well is critical. I know that people are looking for leadership in terms of what can we do, what should we do, how should we do it? And the reality is there is no one answer, right? It's just like the personalization of a classroom. We don't know. We have successful practices and we have strong pedagogies, but we need to just be messy. We need to be messy and try and be forgiving of ourselves and, you know, patient with one another.
I second that motion. It's funny, none of our families have probably ever spent this much one-on-one time with each other. So it's a new normal for all of us.
Yeah, well, we're lucky. I think we're lucky because we work together anyways, right? Like I'm getting some pretty funny texts from my friends who are staying home with their spouses. But lucky for us,
Thanks, Brad.
We've been doing this. It's been our choice. It hasn't been forced upon us like some other people.
Yeah, Nancy just said also, we should really start learning. So when we finally say go, we're somewhat prepared to skill up quickly. And I think this is what Fair Chance Learning and beyond, we should really absolutely be focusing on and really ramp this up so that we can help teachers as much as possible learn some of these technologies, make it simple, give them, you know, get the people in the community that feel more comfortable with this so we can be train the trainer and keep on stepping down so that we are ready to go. I love that statement.
Yeah. So I'm interested and curious to hear from the community who's here in the meeting chat. What would feel right to you? Like if you could design your learning environment or design what the rest of the year might look like, what would it look like for you? And if you had, you know, a whiteboard to map it out, what would it look like?
Morning, if I can chime in.
You sure can, Vince.
I was actually talking about this with my wife yesterday, that I think the big takeaway, first of all, from the presentation was the human element, the connection, right? Just like when you're in your classroom, you greet your students at the door. You don't start the first words with, okay, students, take out your pencils and your books. You know, you make some connection. And I think if I was in a classroom again, I'm a consultant now with the board for 2 years. But if I was back in the classroom, I'd like to reach out to the families to let them know, hey, you know, this is as much as a bother for me as it is for you. But together we're going to get through this. To let them know and let them know that you're working on a plan to go forward. It just hasn't finalized yet because there is a lot of uncertainty still. But then gather up all the students that you can, and you know, maybe send them a message somehow. I know they all talk to each other or Facebook and whatever else. Let them know, hey, on this particular day, if you could please try and log into Teams. You know, we're going to have just a chat, just a discussion. We're not going to do any homework, learning this and that. We're just going to talk about all of this, you know. Yes, show up in your pajamas, have your coffee ready, whatever. Just hey, this is okay. And I'm feeling the same thing you're feeling, but we'll get through this. You know, and then maybe work with them, have them provide some solutions. You know, what do you think schooling should look like from now on? If we're not back in school for another month, what do you think we should do to help you advance, right? And ask them for some input. I mean, they, you know, yeah, they might be, you know, young students in kindergarten, and I don't have that experience. I have, you know, high school level. But students, you'd be surprised what they could come up with. You know, what would learning look like to you? Give me some ideas, and let's work on a plan. So maybe, you know, we spend an hour a day or something. You know, not entirely formal, but you know, some kind of a bit of a schedule, because I'm sure they miss the routine and they miss their friends. And I mean, just seeing, you know, we were on a Teams meeting with my department yesterday, and nobody had their cameras turned on. It was all just little emojis. I'm like, okay, you know, where's the human? I could hear their voices, but it'd be great to see them as well, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's another element that adds to the connection, right? You know, our board is looking at, they're still in some really high level meetings right now with superintendents, and they're looking at ideas, and they're throwing around, like, you know, maybe for elementary schools, about 5 hours a week of course material, and for high schools, about 2 hours per course per week, that kind of scenario. So I'm the co-op education lead for our board. So we have a different scenario, a different reality. Even though there's the placements, they just can't even go to their placements. So we're looking at options to continue the learning there. But I think, again, coming back to just the human element,
Absolutely.
talk to somebody, in your group and let them know, hey, this is okay. I'm virtually holding your hand, through all of this. We'll be okay. And just, let's come up with some ideas. You guys are bright, intelligent. Give me some ideas. Let's work together and come up with a plan.
And we've recorded this today, and feel free to share this link, or I and any of the people at Fair Chance Learning, we would speak with anyone at any time just to kind of convey this message live. So if you have a platform where there's a school board meeting or anything like that, let us know how we can reach out, because sometimes if you're from more than 50 kilometers away, you're suddenly an expert, and sometimes they just want to hear that.
Yeah. And to touch on your point about some of the parents not being tech savvy, I think this particular situation highlights the need or something to have a parent technology soiree or something like that. Come to school and we'll show you how we use the technology with your child. And so that you can continue at home if you needed to, if there was ever a situation, right? It's a slow idea to catch on, but I think it has a lot of value. I adore the tech and I use it to my fullest advantage. And I think parents would do the same if they knew how.
And like with the class in Dubai, we started with the parents that morning. They had a lot of questions, and how will this move forward? Are we teaching cursive?
Yeah, exactly.
It was just a fascinating moment. And again, the students were so excited just to be part of their normal, regular world. Yeah. We can't take that away. And in Virginia, we have now canceled all classes until August 16th.
Wow.
So it's this weird, crazy moment that we are. And our schools are doing very little to tell us how we should be connecting. They're just saying whatever you think, and that's not an answer. So right. This is maybe be happy that your Ministry of Education is saying, let's take a second to formulate a plan.
Yeah, because I think the schools themselves don't know, right? And like you said, we've never been in this situation before. This is a new, entirely different reality that'll be around for a while, but it sets the stage for what's going to happen in the future. And it's like a wake-up call, like, hey, the technology is available, it does awesome stuff, it can help us do awesome things. Maybe we should be a little bit more familiar with it, and every once in a while, like I told students, I was training the teachers last year on using Teams, and says, Teams is a snow day killer. When there's no buses running and your students have to stay home, you, the teacher, you got to be in your classroom. Well, you could easily run your class remotely, right? Just have all your students log in. That would have been a great start,
I agree.
But that's my 2 cents worth. And
thank you for your input. I think it's brilliant.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, great.
I think what's funny, like I always feel that we need the language, the consistency of language in terms of how we're communicating, because the uncertainty that is in front of us right now has to do with the fact that, like, for example, you say classes are canceled until August 15th, right? And so as parent, if I hear canceled, then I think that there's no formal education going on. If I hear school is closed, I get the same feeling. But really what our government has been saying is that, like, the physical building is closed. But, do parents really understand that each school district is having these meetings, trying to consider ongoing dialogue, input from the classroom teacher, and we're even seeing classroom teachers saying, is my input going to be part of the discussion, part of the planning? Like, I am responsible for my group of 25 students, 18 students. We won't do student size or class size, but am I responsible for the education of these people, these humans, until the end of the academic year, right? And so I think we have to be really consistent in terms of the language that we're using, so parents understand the nuances of what's being told.
Yeah. And what we're doing in the primary grades in rural areas is we're actually sending out little packets of all their little workshops each week now to the home addresses, and the parents can opt out and do everything digital. So we're starting these little pathways, but now we're trying to figure out, okay, when we send them back, how do we do this? And
right.
It's this huge moment of, and none of us know exactly, Dubai has been shut down since January 15th, but yet they did their first face-to-face with the kids Sunday. So this tells you this is probably not going to be perfect overnight.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other comments? Megan, is there anything in the chat? You'll chime in if there's something we need to address.
Someone's asking if there's a spot to grab the links to the recordings from yesterday. Good. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
And I love what Jeff is saying, maybe as every province and community is starting to come up with these ideas and resources, really have a platform for everyone to share what's happening. Because I think why reinvent the wheel? Why don't we just learn from what's working in other areas?
Yeah. Thank you for posting, Krista, your thoughts. And just so everybody knows, this chat is pervasive. So it goes all the way back to the first staff chat. So, you can scroll instead of scrolling some of the headlines that you need a break from. You can scroll to see the conversation here. People are wondering how to like a comment. I'm just going to share my screen. What I think is, because you're a guest, that you may not have the capability, but I'll show you what you should see. So when I hover over the conversation, I get this little status bar that allows me to comment or even translate or put it into the immersive reader. So from an inclusion perspective, that's pretty critical as well to allow that conversation. The other piece I'll show you is if you're on a Windows device and you want to insert an emoji, you can press the little Windows key and the period sign, and you start typing something like rocket ship. Okay, and then you just click on it and you get your emoji sending in that way. So I very often use that, and that works in any of your chat windows, or if you're in a Word document, it works across the operating system. So that's your little Tuesday tech tip with Martha. So that may be why you're not able to add the emojis, but you can insert the emoji with the windows, holding down the windows and the period keys together. So for tomorrow, everybody, we'll be hearing from our dear friend and colleague, Jeff Hainbeck, who will be helping us understand this from the well-being lens, like I said earlier, because if anything, we know that it's the well-being and the social emotional side of things that needs to the most caretaking and custodian for us right now, for ourselves, for our children, for our students, for our colleagues and peers. So that's a critical conversation that we look forward to having with each and every one of you. And yes, please share it with your colleagues. We will be compiling these resources so you can have them available to you. But as Corinne said, it really is going to be those, 15-minute connects where you're like, okay, can you help me try this out? And our answer is going to be, we're here to help you. Yes, let's figure this out together, and we'll just keep the communications going. We're going to be here consistently to update you, to hear what's going on, to support you, and to give you some insight into the world from our perspective, but also hear what's going on in your world, and try our best to do the right thing and to learn from this experience. So thanks to Corinne for doing an amazing job, and for all of you for participating. And we'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. Be well. And